Okay, welcome everybody to the June 30th, 2025 special council meeting. Before we begin, I just want to acknowledge that the district of Chosen conducts its business on the Coast Salish territory and the traditional territory of the Shiano speaking people, or the Shiano First Nation. The district of Chosen works increasingly to be mindful of its commitment to be more inclusive in its governance with our neighbors, the Sioux Nation and the Shiano Nation. And with that, Council, you have an agenda before you. We have a pink, which will add to 5C. With that, I'll take a motion to adopt as amended.
It's good. As I mentioned, I have a notice of motion as well I'd like to add to the agenda.
A notice of motion at, okay, we'll do that right before the adjournment. Okay, with that, I'll take a motion to adopt. Moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Great. Public participation. Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak this evening? If so, if you could state your name and your road, and you have 4 minutes. Yeah. Yes, please, and just pull the microphone up a bit.
Okay. Ann Richmond, Arden Road. And I came today because I'm really excited that you're talking about the public engagement strategy for the housing, part of the official community plan. That's something that the Housing Initiatives Collaborative has been really interested in for the last year, more than a year. And I do have some suggestions for the survey, which I will submit in writing, because I think it's a really good opportunity to find out a little bit more about the housing that's actually happening in Metchosin, because we all know that there's more than the official numbers of dwellings and subsidiary dwellings, and it might be an opportunity to get a sense of that, because I think there's a potential for pathways to legalization or recognition for those with a health and safety perspective. And but I really welcome the survey, and I really welcome the opportunities for public discussion. Yeah, and if there's anything that our group can do to help, we'd be really happy to do that, because we've had quite a lot of public interest, and not just in the meetings that we've had, which have been well attended, but also in we've got a pretty active Facebook group as well. So there's more than 300 people that have been participating fairly actively in that. So there's a lot of interest in that. The other thing I wanted to say was that I have a concern about the difference between the sort of notional availability of subdivision or multiple use of properties and the actuality. Just because of who I hear from, I hear more about problems with it and barriers and lack of ability to do that. So the fact that on paper there's subdividable properties might not be translating into actual accessibility. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shukin.
So I wanted to just mention one thing about Ms. Richmond's comments. I think it is council's intention tonight, sorry, not our intention, but the opportunity to move ahead with the survey as amended. So if Ms. Richmond has input into the survey, it might be a little late for that. And maybe we can have further discussion about that, but I think we have to move along with our plans. Otherwise, the next time we meet is July, and that will put us behind in terms of actually the execution of the public.
Yeah, we're up against a hard deadline at the end of the year. Ms. Richmond, do you have them on paper, these suggestions? We're going to be discussing it first up. Was there one specific question you wanted to add some bullets to? You want to come to the microphone? Thank you.
the very specific part was there was a question about, do you have a B&B or a short-term rental? And at the very least, it seemed to me potential to ask, do you have long-term rental as well? Do you have, are you renting to other people? Whether that's legitimate or not, but that seemed to me a real gap.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak at public participation? Okay, seeing none, let's move along to the business arising. Item number 4A on page 3. So this is the communication strategy that you saw before. The draft public survey questions have been amended. As you'll note here, and we have some specific asks, as you've noted from earlier this evening and from the last evening when we discussed this. We're up against a deadline of the end of the year, and so the public engagement strategy, which is important and mandated, will start as soon as possible in September. If I'm not, is it July and September, Councillor Shubin? Yeah. July, okay. Yeah, that's right, July to September. Yeah. Okay, so comments. Go ahead, Councillor Shubin.
I think the one outstanding issue for me was the nature of the survey, some of the specifics, and we pointed out and made some comments. I think the planner and Mr. Payette have done a really good job at receiving and providing those comments, building those comments into what's here before. I'm prepared to move ahead with this.
And we could add the long-term rental question to, question 13 is, do you operate a short-term rental or bed and breakfast? We could just truncate that. Do you offer a rental, and then the short-term rental, bed and breakfast, and long-term rental. How's that sound for exactly. Question number 13? Okay. Anything else, Councillor Shubin?
No,
good. Okay, Councillor Gray.
Yeah, just appreciation for the work that's been done. And I wondered if we might add the Metchosin Foundation as one of the stakeholder groups on page 5 of the agenda package. I think the planner's intending to cast it wide, so I'd like to do that. And then I had a few comments about the questions, and I go through a few of them. Just in the first question, the third bullet, the question is, what's your current living arrangement? And then the third bullet, I pay rent for an entire house or other dwelling type. And I think it might be worth separating those so we find out what is another dwelling type. I'm not sure. Does that mean a trailer, a mobile home, or what? So I think we have a conversation, and as in the last meeting, the planner could pick up the thought. So just having other dwelling type tied in with an entire house, we would not know what the answer was to that question.
So what you would like to see is, I pay rent for an entire house, I pay rent for a trailer, I pay rent for a chicken coop, or I guess that's what she's
I don't know what other dwelling type. Yeah, so it could, again, we could leave it the precise wording, but I pay rent for another dwelling type, please specify, or something like that. I think what it's trying to catch here is mobile homes are a legitimate housing option, and then just hearing from Ms. Richmond tonight, maybe other dwelling there. When I drop down then to number 7, which is the housing concerns, I think what would be, well, maybe I can ask a question, but what are the housing concerns are there? I think when we talked about this at MEASC the other night, Someone mentioned distance to schools is one of the housing concerns. Homelessness is not written here, and yet it's one of our key questions we're meant to be getting opinions on. So I wondered if homelessness might be added. And then something that's missing here, whether we add it here in another place, is the aquifer. Are people concerned about aquifer? Substandard housing would be another topic. So just expanding that list a little bit to catch the things that we will need to write policy about according to the plan. On question number 8, there's a bit in at the very end of that question, it says, if yes, please explain. If no, say no issues or no comment. No means different than no issues, and it's different than no comment. So my suggestion is we just strike that entire sentence. If yes, please explain. If no, say no issues or no comment, and just have the question and then put please explain. Allow people to explain either way. The next question, number 9, are there barriers to building? And I think we might add or renting a secondary suite. And there the distances, I think we should be talking square meters, not square feet, simply because we're in Canada. And then the second bullet on that, these are again just editing questions, but I think the 90 square meters, 968 square feet applies to attached secondary suites, so it might be worth inserting the word attached. This question is one that gets to, I think what we heard tonight from Ms. Richmond is, well, what's in the way, or what's the trouble here? And I'd like to add here, concerns re aquifer depletion. I think one of the reasons why people aren't putting a secondary suite in is that they're on a well and they think, I can't have another well right beside me. Be nice to know that, because if that's the reason, then enlarging suites doesn't change the problem. And aquifers is a big issue for people. Privacy would be another question, I think I might add. We've also heard the night sky. When I jump down to question 11, I think there's a problem with question 11. It reads to me like a push question. It's almost like we say 46% of people don't have housing response indicate a lack of housing. I would prefer question 11 say something like, do you have experience with the need for housing for farm workers accommodation? Something like that. On the last question 14, I believe short-term rentals have affected the ability of long-term rentals in the Metchosin. Would it be helpful to say, do you believe short-term rentals should be restricted, expanded, or not changed? Do we want to ask any qualitative information, or simply it's an issue? Those are a few comments I had. Oh, and then you'd mentioned, Mayor Little, the idea of getting people's postal code or some idea maybe of the neighborhood they live in. And I think that would be worthwhile. It's a different issue for people, say, in Tower Point area as compared to Le Bon Road, different kind of setup, and where will be issues where houses are closer together versus far apart. So knowing neighborhood might be helpful. Those are a few ideas.
I think the planner was asking the questions and getting answers to things that we can actually do something about. I'm not sure if we can do something about the aquifer, except for when we're doing subdivisions.
Right. I might just jump in to say, it's asking a person, why are you not putting a secondary suite on your house? And we've heard a lot of people concerned about water. So it's not us doing something about it. It's finding out, is that the reason why are they not building these secondary suites? What's the reason? And one might be rights and obligations to landlords. Another might be, I don't want to put another well on my property. And knowing that difference would help us know, pick the best approach. So let's say everybody responded and said, it's the size of the suite. I don't care about the aquifer, it doesn't concern me, the cost don't bother me, I'm okay to be a landlord. Then we know, okay, let's go in and make those suites larger. But if it turns out the size of the suite is not the issue, it's the aquifer, then I agree we don't have much to do there. I really like what the planner's done here by showing some trade-offs, and I'm just suggesting a few more of those trade-offs would be helpful to us as we're analyzing the results.
Councillor Shukin.
So one of the things that we could do tonight is, with the motion, it's to receive and endorse the community engagement strategy as amended. So it has been amended. But we might also say, and reflecting comments as much as possible from the June 30th meeting. So we provided comments. There may be things that we can do whole hog, and there may be some things that might pose limitations in terms of getting the actual survey done and practical for use.
Mm-hmm.
So, and like at this table, we probably need to avoid editing, like micro editing this, especially at this stage too. So Mr. Payette's here and Ms. Barnes is taking notes, and
And I'm agreeable to that. As after the other meeting, I sent some notes to the planner, and she's incorporated. It's just a question of it's a little bit of work on it. I'm okay if she can take a look at these ideas and see what works and what doesn't.
Okay, and what about, did anybody else have any comments regarding the survey? Councillor Epper Donaldson? No? Okay, so what about the capacity analysis? Any comments about that? Because we're asked to receive the housing capacity analysis and confirm direction with the housing focus review. So does anybody have any comments? We did have a discussion, of course, the other night. Go ahead.
I thought it was good work and well done. I think the question then becomes dealing with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 6 key areas that were identified, and that's what will come out of the engagement work.
Okay. Well then, do you want to, Councillor Shukin, do you want to move the recommended endorsements?
should I read the whole thing?
What?
Should I read the whole thing?
Sure. Yeah, just for everybody
Okay.
in the room knows
So-
where we are.
So Mayor Little, I'd move that council receive the housing capacity analysis, confirm direction to proceed with a housing focused review and update of the official community plan and land use bylaw, prioritizing the following policy areas for review, including the housing needs report integration, policy review respecting each class of housing needs required to be addressed from the housing needs report, policies affecting short-term rental in residential areas, temporary housing options for farmers, farm workers, and receive and endorse the community engagement strategy as amended. And here's the addition to the agenda, and reflecting comments as much as possible from the June 30th meeting, and to include council input for the housing focused official community plan and land use bylaw review and update.
This is moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Other comments? Okay, with much appreciation on the part of the CAO and the planner. And Ms. Hampton, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Great. Okay, let's move along to the staff report, the annual report for council to consider the 2024 annual report. This is on page 11 of your agenda package. This is to CAO Payette from Tina Hansen. CAO Payette, did you want to comment on that?
Thank you, through the chair. Love to comment on the annual report. Tina had done such an amazing job, and she's not here tonight, so I wanted to give her some appreciation and some justice. And she wrote out a few notes for me, of course, to reiterate. So I would be remiss if I didn't read a few of her notes.
Thank you.
And that staff are pleased to introduce the annual report for tonight. The draft report was introduced on June 16th, and it was available for council review, public inspection, and on the district website. There have been no written submissions received on the report from members of the public. Notice of the annual meeting was published June 18th and June 25th, it is now in order for council to receive input on the annual report from the public, and if there's any questions. That's that.
Okay. Okay, Council, do you have any questions for CAO Payette? Go ahead, Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Mary Little. I have no questions. I just wanted to comment on the great work that all of our staff and members of council and the committees and the citizens of this community, when I read the annual report, I'm always filled with more pride in learning about our community and all the wonderful things that go on. And it's collaborative. It involves everybody, not just a sector of people. And I think that's really what community is about. So I really appreciate the collaborative effort of putting this report together and how it has evolved over a number of years.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shukin.
Echoing Councillor Donaldson's comments, I think it's a wonderful document and just a great summary of what we've done over the year, or sorry, in 2024. And again, just you can do this in good ways and bad ways, and the information can all be there, but it can be crammed in and tables unclear, and this is presented wonderfully. So again, kudos to Deputy Corporate Officer Hanson. So thank you.
Councillor F, this is the 6th annual report that you've seen.
Yes, and it's certainly ever since Ms. Hanson started doing it, it's been amazing to read. It's such a great record to have and look back and you read and sort of remember all these things that kind of went on, and it's really a great tool to have on hand. And yes, and it's awesome. And I will move that council approve the District of Chosen 2024 annual report.
This is moved by Councillor F, seconded by Councillor Gray. Comments, extra comments? Nope. Okay, I'll call the motion. All in favor? Opposed, carried. Thank you. And we have a staff report on permissive tax exemptions on page 107 of your council agenda. CFO Creek is not here this evening, but there's a written report with a recommendation. Let's have a discussion about the permissive tax exemption policy. Or would you like to also comment, CAO Payette?
I would like to.
Excuse you.
Introduce.
Sorry.
Thank you through the chair. And
Yeah.
CFO Creek is away tonight on a special occasion, so I will give him some justice as well. So there is a recommendation before council to adopt, but I believe there's still time. There's no hurry on this one, so don't feel too pressured. There's some excellent information to absorb. If you haven't had a chance to read through it completely, I can go through it very quickly, hit the highlights. For the general public, that the District of Metchosin has authority to grant permissive tax exemptions. Historically, the district has received such requests on a case-by-case basis. Over to the next page. In the discussion, to improve transparency and accountability, staff are recommending the adoption of a new permissive tax policy and associated application form, all provided to you tonight. And the proposed policy establishes a framework for evaluating those applications. Applications would be evaluated based on community service, financial need, alignment with council objectives, and actual use of the property. And council may wish to consider establishing limits, and there are approaches provided to establishing limits on the total value or number of exemptions. And then there's the policy, and I just thought I'd go through it, policy, just to help everybody get their head around it, and maybe a quick summary for people listening. Bylaw background: a permissive tax exemption is a means for council to support organizations in the community that further council's objective to enhance the quality of life while delivering services economically to the citizens of Metchosin. The council may designate only a portion. Well, in terms of scope, council may designate only a portion of the land improvements depending on circumstances, and there's a list of various circumstances. Council can impose conditions. For example, council could request registration of a covenant restricting use on the property as an example of a condition. Council may impose penalties. Council may impose funding caps. Eligibility for exemption should be based on the principle of use of the property. And there's some excellent examples here of eligibility criteria in this section. And then there's a procedure for council to consider applications for permissive tax exemptions annually. Opportunity to apply for permissive tax exemptions will be advertised, and applications must be submitted to the finance department by a certain date, which would be July 15th of each year. So, and then I guess in summary, there's a fulsome application form to be filled out. And that pretty much rounds out my summary, but gives council all the procedural ammunition to really give it a fulsome review for each application in a fair and equitable way.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Shukin first.
So thanks to Mr. Payette for the summary. I feel like Mr. Creek, and correct me if I'm wrong though, has opened something up that I don't suspect any recent council was fully aware of. And that's, if we grant permissive tax exemptions, we're also granting exemptions for, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Payette, but regional hospital, taxation, CRD, school, transit levy, West Shore Parks and Recreation. So all of those things, not just the municipal portion. Is that correct?
I can check, but I don't believe that would be correct. We would be
Yes.
providing the tax exemption.
I think he is correct from my conversations with CFO Creek. So we it's not only the municipal portion that we grant the exemption for, and that was alarming when I read this because I was never aware of that.
Yeah.
But we can check with CFO Creek because that doesn't seem equitable to me. Because for sure we could say on behalf of the citizens, the municipal portion, they could be exempt from. But the others, the transit, CRD, the West Shore Parks and Recreation, schools, for instance. It seems like that the citizens of Metchosin may be paying extra for these or paying other people's portion for these others. That's a bit concerning to me.
Yeah, thank you. It would be good to get clarity on that for sure. And I there's a matter of principle I feel like my brain is going to, but can't fully articulate in terms of tax fairness. Particularly, I think it's fair for us to adjudicate on whether somebody pays the municipal portion. But is that the case with the CRD, hospital, school, transit, etc.? If that is the case, that's something we should be fully aware of. So,
well, we could bring this back to council as well when CFO Creek's going to be here and he can give us some examples, specific numbers. That would be helpful. Anything else? Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I just had a question, and maybe this is for Mr. Creek, but perhaps through you to the CAO. On the second page of the document, 108 of the agenda, it says the table's labeled 2025 permissive tax exemptions. And then there's values beside the different properties. And I just didn't know what those values were. Say, for example, BC Society of Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, Class 1 residential, 327,700. Class 6 business, 1,640,000. Is that the value of the properties that are held, or what is it exactly? And I guess I would be curious to know how these total up. In other words, what is the actual tax relief that's being provided to the different properties depending on their class, possibly?
CAO Payette.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right on the properties, but we will get a breakdown on the numbers. And what was the second part of the?
Well,
So these numbers would be based on the BC assessment values. That seems
Oh,
right.
Seems about right.
some
And
seem
the
to.
second question was,
Well, what for a property, there are different classes of properties, so I guess that means there's different tax implications. So maybe it's just, when we talk to the CFO, we could get a bit more clarity on what that means.
You mean like the zoning or that?
It's kind of a technical question, I think, so I'm happy to, another night just to hear from.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I wondered about, so I might offer that the idea for taking a look at this really came through the notion of some concerns that I had that, well, in relation to what's gone on in the past with tax exempt properties and plans possibly to develop them. And so I had been discussing this at MEASCAN at the council table, the idea of making sure that we get stewardship of land in some occasions where we offer a tax exemption. And now it's developed to a much larger question here, and I'm still seeing the part about covenants on properties, which I think is great, and maintaining existing tree canopy, that came from MEASC. But when I looked over at the eligibility criteria, I wasn't sure about some of those, and I thought it would be helpful to talk to Mr. Creek about them, just how they work. I believe what he did is he went out and looked at what other communities are doing and then brought together a kind of a full package, which is great to see. But I wondered on the first bullet, for example, it suggests that an agency has to be competing with privately owned and pre-existing businesses. So I wondered if that was, if the word not was missing, will not compete. I'm just not clear about that. Bullet number 5, I wasn't sure, for example, if we did want to give a tax exemption to, say, a piece of land that's protected, a nature reserve, an example being the BC Parks Foundation, then that might not be compatible with accessibility to the residents of the district of Metchosin. So perhaps there's another bullet here which is about protected land as an example. Also, residents must be the primary beneficiaries of the organization's services. I don't know if that's true of wild art, for example. I think they take animals from various different locations. So just kind of discussing some of those items with Mr. Creek and working our way on this, I think would be helpful. But by and large, I appreciate the effort and think it's kind of nice to, as Councillor Shukin opened with, having eyes open about what we're seeing exactly and when we make the decisions, what we're doing. So thanks to staff.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else wish to comment? Go ahead, Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you. I had a query about under scope number 2.1 and the following bullets. The first one, registration of a covenant restricting use of the property. So I have a couple of questions about that. If it was an exempt property, would the covenant be put on the property during the exemption? If they chose to not be exempt, would they have the covenant lifted? So in other words, is it only as long as the exemption is in place, or is it forever after? So that would be one of my questions. And then following that, the next one is an agreement committing the organization to maintaining the existing tree canopy, and then the other ones as well. I guess why I'm asking about the covenant, and then when I look at the tree canopy and other agreements, which we have the ability to put in as far as the district can require these things. Is the covenant being asked because there's a problem with how these properties are being managed? And the reason I'm asking that, especially with the next one about the tree canopy, we do know that we will be addressing our tree management bylaw probably within the next year, I suspect. And so is the covenant about that or is it something else? And so I think a lot of these properties have a significant tree canopy already on them, and they've maintained them quite well. Unless there's been complaints, I don't know. So I just was querying about the purpose of having the covenant on it, and have we had a problem up to this point? So is there a cause of concern?
Do you want me to speculate on that one?
Good, sure.
Yeah, so I think formerly the Boys and Girls Club, for instance, received tax exemptions. They had promised, I think is a good word, to have covenants on that land to protect the land. And then they put forward a subdivision application. And to me, a covenant aims to protect the land. Protect the biodiversity there, protect the trees and fauna and everything. I suspect that's why a covenant is on it, and I would suspect that if the organization is not interested in putting a covenant on it, then that would give us an indication that maybe we would not be interested in giving a permissive tax exemption.
Okay, so it's an environmental covenant, or is it a tree covenant? Is there a specific covenant? And so then my point is, so I don't think that they're not on our list any longer. So I don't know if they still have covenants on there or not. So if a person or an organization chose then not to, or to leave at some point in time, because they have to renew the exemption every year. So if they didn't come back the next year, is that covenant in place in perpetuity, I guess is the word.
I don't know the specifics. I would have to ask HAT or Matrosen Foundation. Councillor Shukin, do you know?
Well, I don't know, but I might speculate that the answer would be not forever, but it'd be very difficult to lift, because if you're doing a Section 219 covenant, as I understand it, there's a lot of work in that, and it's not sloughed off easily. So one of the things that I guess if a group was questioned on that, and you know the council of the day said we think a covenant is appropriate, the question for them is it worth it to that group? And they might decide no, it's not worth it, and then the question for the council that's determined to have that covenant is pretty easy. You don't get the permissive tax exemption. So that's kind of, yeah.
Because it's upwards to about $10,000 to do a covenant, right?
Yeah. Now, I've heard stories where, yeah, there was a council that wanted certain things from an organization, and the organization said, no, that's going to cost us too much. We don't think it's appropriate for us, and we won't even apply for the tax exemption. So that's sort of one of the things that, like, it's a tool, I think, for council.
So I guess what I'm also asking is so if you have an organization that offers all the services and everything that we're asking, they're good stewards of the land, you still want a covenant on it, they decide then they're going to go into forest management, and that probably would interfere with the covenant. What I'm thinking is maybe it would be too restrictive, especially if we're talking about trees here, because all of those properties, I think, have significant population of trees on them. It could go the other way, I guess. We could end up losing the tree canopy wouldn't matter if they had an exemption or not, because they could choose not to, and they could, if they go into forest management, they can log as is suited through the management process, which is out of our reach as a community or as a district.
Yeah, I don't know. I can only speculate that they would have a change in ethos, and we also might have a change in the way we look at that organization as well. I don't know. It's hard to speculate on unknowns and uncertainties. Go ahead.
And Mayor Little, you made a good point about an organization in the past, and I think one of the things that maybe this list helps us with is if there is an organization where there is a change over time that maybe you didn't bank on. Like again, this particular list is something council may impose, and then the list below is including but not limited to. So it's, again, some tools, some ideas, but yeah. Mm-hmm. But I think that was a great example you raised earlier about how the relationship begins but does change over time, or could change over time.
And actually it could change again. They haven't sold their land, they haven't developed it, they're still preserving that particular land. So they may come back to us at some point and say, could we have a permissive tax exemption? And that would be something for us to consider.
And actually, there have been trees removed from one of their parcels. So that's the question. It can be quite restrictive if we don't have enough faith in our land use bylaws and the other bylaws that we have with its, the tree management, that sort of thing. Then I'm just wondering, how restrictive are we going to get? All the ones that are on this list have, from my perspective, living here at least, have been very good stewards of the land. Obviously, we've cited the one that had a change. Not say they were not good stewards of the land, but they chose some different avenues, which in the end didn't pan out quite the way they had expected. So the land is still preserved to some degree.
Okay, so we can be permissive as we want. It's actually worth a lot of money. It's nothing to shake a stick at. It is a substantial amount of revenue that we are giving up. So in my mind, we can be as restrictive as we want in this. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
I just had another comment on the application form. And that was just that we want to presumably collect certain information, but to take care not to overburden people with information we might not use. So as I was reading it, I could see it being a little bit slimmer. It might be difficult for the church, for example, to count all the volunteer hours that are put in. We might, that's the sort of thing, just thinking about participant numbers. They may not have counts of every service they hold or that sort of thing. So make it easy for people to fill in, but make sure we get the information that we or the staff absolutely need to make a good recommendation to us.
Okay, so I would suggest that we table this until another meeting, and we'll have Mr. Creek here at the meeting who can answer some specific questions. Does that sound okay? Okay, so let's table that, and we'll move along to page 119. This is portion C, the staff report, Metropolitan Growing Society license of occupation at 4495 Happy Valley Road.
Okay, through the chair. Thank you again. So this document is with the Metropolitan Growing Society, and Tina basically put together the document. I've been involved a little bit with the society, and they have lots of energy, and I applaud them for this initiative. And it's for the use of the portion of the lands that's in your pink there, just so everybody's clear. We've seen that before. be a 4-year term expiring June 2029. Society would be responsible for maintaining the licensed area. And the agreement includes provisions around invasive species, noxious weeds, and prohibited plants according to the Capital Region Invasive Species Program, CRISP. The district is required to provide a notice of the property disposition and notice of assistance in accordance with the community charter. So we will do that. Okay, that pretty much is my notes from Deputy Corporate Officer. And is there any questions?
Any questions for CAO Payette on the license of occupation? Go ahead, Councillor Gray.
Yeah, through the chair. I know this is a technicality, but I'm only curious. Do we do a property disposition for the MCA or the museum and the other people who rent our properties? Or did we just discover this and we're doing it? Maybe it lasts forever once it's done. I'm not unhappy to do it. I was just curious.
Yeah, CAO Payette.
It's a good question. I believe from what I gleaned, wasn't completely in the conversation, but we may have missed some notices, so we might have to do it in hindsight, but we are aware that all of them need to be noticed. So
yeah, from my
might be some
conversations
catch-up
with
to do.
Ms. Hanson, they have been missed. That was one of the things that had not been paid attention to was, according to the section 26 of the community charter, all of the groups, when the property or that portion would not be open to the public. Councillor Donaldson.
Yeah, you're correct. I had a conversation with Ms. Hanson this morning in regards to this, and we explored the other groups as well. And because we are also, it's on the docket for us to review their terms of reference. And instead of doing them all individually and going into the paper individually, it's more cost effective to do it all at once. So she did identify that it would be all inclusive once we get to that point to do the disposition for all the groups. Quite right.
Yeah, and good on her for doing things the right way. That's what we asked her to do at the beginning of the term. So it does slow things down, but it is the proper way to do things, and that's what we're doing. Okay. Anything else? Any other comments? Councillor Gray.
I had a couple in material comments to the document itself. The contract, that is 17.2E, refers to the use of pesticides and herbicides. In my understanding, this will be food or possibly flowers. My suggestion is we truncate that sentence. Right now it says, without limiting the foregoing, the licensee must not use or apply or allow any pesticide or herbicide within the lands. It carries on, without the prior written approval of the municipality. And my suggestion is that we just be clear and say, without limiting the foregoing, the licensee must not use or apply or allow any pesticide or herbicide within the lands, period.
Okay.
This is people are growing vegetables for their consumption and possibly flowers. It just seems to me we can make it kind of easy. I don't think there's any reason people need to use it. I mean, it was a big commercial operation possibly, but this is small family plots, I imagine.
I'd have to think about that one. Go ahead, Councillor Shukin.
I'm not in favor of that. I'm not in favor of using pesticide or herbicide, and I suspect that the Garden Society is also, going to be on that wavelength as well. But I believe that there's an appropriate sort of check here in terms of any wanton use of herbicides. And the document overall seems quite rigorous to me. And I'm suspecting that the overall spirit of the piece is, the rigor that's applied here, I think, is going to result in a good outcome for the Garden Society and for that piece of property. And I don't believe that, truncating this is the right way to go.
Okay.
I'd be interested to hear from others in the council whether they think herbicides and pesticides in a food garden makes sense for us to be in the position of approving at any time.
Yep, Councillor Donaldson?
As I recall, this document has gone back and forth to lawyers. But in regards to this one, this is, I can speak on behalf of the organization because I've been shepherding them through this process for a while now. There is no interest, and actually I believe it's written in their constitution not to use things like pesticides and herbicides. I think it's been pretty clear that the district isn't even supporting that with agricultural land in the agricultural plan. I think there's even comments of that. So I wouldn't have a problem taking that part out, but I also am reading the whole thing about must not use or apply to be the significant part here. The approval of the municipality, unless that changes, I don't believe we're doing it anyways. A conversation I had with Misk a year ago was, no, we don't want this on there, and it got into a very in-depth conversation about how it would or wouldn't be helpful or not, and I learned a lot as I'm going through all of this. This group at this present time are not inclined to do this, but we should probably put it in words what we expect.
Okay, Councillor Epp, do you have any comments?
I think it's fine as is.
Yeah, I'm reluctant always to edit documents that have been approved by our lawyer. I'm a little bit hesitant to do that because I'm trying to think of the ramifications and the scenarios, and I'm more inclined to keep it as it is, especially hearing from Councillor Donaldson that they have no interest in pesticide and herbicides at this time. Councillor Gray.
So what this is doing, I mean, you can call it rigorous or whatever. So what you're rigorously doing is saying it's okay. We may well approve the use of herbicides and pesticides here. What I'm saying is, and the lawyers have said, yeah, that would allow them to do so. I'm saying I have no interest in that. I don't think we should be putting herbicides and pesticides on a vegetable garden, and I don't think it should happen under our council. And so I'm just saying, take it out. The people who are renting it are happy. The lawyers will be happy. We'll all be happy. The only reason you have it here is because you want to permit it to occur in some circumstances. And what I'm saying is I don't know of a circumstance. If there's a problem with the cabbage there that's got some aphids on it, and you're worried about it, pull it out and put it in the compost. Don't spray it. And I can't imagine any reason why anybody would want to do that on district property. If it's on your own house, we don't have a choice in that. But I'm suggesting that we should be clear about this. And if the people who are signing the contract with us are clear about it, are okay with it, there's no reason to leave it in there.
Okay. Any other comments, Councillor Shukin?
The only comment I would have is I don't think this particular thing is worth holding up the agreement over. And again, particularly if the people who we are, going to be engaged, and I pointed to Councillor Donaldson because I know she's connected with them extensively. If their ethic is away from pesticide and herbicide, so I still don't think it's worth closing doors, and I don't know if any of us are fully abreast of what especially herbicide could mean, whether now or in the future. So, yeah.
So I'll make a motion that we strike the words without the prior written approval of the municipality on clause 17.2E of the proposed contract.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a seconder? Do I have a seconder?
I would second it, and I have a further comment.
Okay, that's second. So we have a motion on the table. Go ahead, Councillor Gray. Do you want to motivate more?
Yeah, so I mean, people maybe understand pesticides typically are nerve poisons on the nervous system. Herbicides, we have lots to talk about there in terms of dangers. I just think that this is going on food, and we should take this position for the district.
Councillor Donaldson.
The other thing I wanted to say is, I agree with what Councillor Gray is saying. We're also being asked, or not we, but the society is being asked for further guidelines and procedures and stuff like that. That has to be put in all the documentation to not use that kind of stuff, like in their operating procedures, that sort of thing. So that is still yet to come as well. So it should be combined with it. I don't have a problem taking out those words. The essence of 17.2E still states to not allow or to apply or to use pesticide and herbicide.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Shukin.
You know, hearing Councillor Donaldson doesn't have any issues with this, and again, knowing the close contact she's had with the group, I'm fine to have it removed as well. I don't think it's going to be a big issue. I'd rather not close the door, but I'm totally fine to get it going.
Okay. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Mayor Little opposed. Okay, great. Let's move on to the main motion.
Oh.
That we've got two options here on page 121. Councillor Gray.
I just have two other questions in the document. On 18.1, there's mention of the CRISP priority invasive plants. The word priority is going to be removed shortly from the list, as I've reported into council. So we could strike the word priority. Simply put, it's the plants that according to the CRISP group, consider invasive, should not be planted in their garden. That would just make it clean. It doesn't, if people want to leave the word priority in, they may, but that word is going to soon not be part of the CRISP program. And the other point I had was, I noticed in 19.1, the municipality is going to pay to put in the water line and the water meter, and I wondered how much that will cost.
I don't know. CAO Payette, do you have any idea of how much the water line and the cost of the water will be? There will be a cost recovery from the organization on a monthly basis for the cost of the water. I guess the question is how much will it be for the line?
Yeah, I don't see where it says we're putting the line in. The municipality shall be responsible for establishing all works necessary to connect existing water mains to a water meter located on or on blah, blah, blah. I don't see anything with the water lines. So I'm not sure, where did you see that?
Councillor Gray.
Yeah, so the water main, I guess, is on the street.
Yeah.
And if we look at the map, a water line would need to run from the street to the area.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess, where the water meter would be put in. So there'll be a cost to connect to the water main, to run a line in, and then to attach a meter.
Yeah, there would be, I don't believe we agreed to pay for the installation of the line, but we agreed to connect it and put a meter on the water main. So that's just a little bit of a, I don't know, detail there.
So is that no cost item then?
Councillor Donaldson, what was your understanding? Were you understanding that the municipality was to pay for the line installation or the connection?
Well, what I had read here on page 120, is, and I'll give a bit of history on this, is under the financial implications, there is a statement here: the district may supply in-kind services if available, including staff time to prepare the site for a separate water connection meter. There already is a water connection meter there. There's several along the street, actually. However, the community garden is not expected to result in any major ongoing cost to the district. So when I read this, it was a little bit different than what I had thought. I mean, prior to that, it says society will be responsible for all costs associated with installing and maintaining the garden, including use of water. So I need clarity on that myself, because we thought I'm looking for grants for them, to put a water line in from the meter to the garden. So I mean, it was a lovely surprise to see maybe in-kind services be available. I already was looking at a contractor for them. So I need some clarity, who's paying for this? I assumed it was the garden.
Yeah, I assumed it was the garden group as well, because in the past, the equestrians have asked for a line or a hydrant or some source of water close, and that has in the past been denied. So, yeah, okay. So, assuming that it is the responsibility of the garden group to provide the budget, provide the money for the line, and the district would pay for the actual connection. And is there a meter there? There isn't, is there? Is there? Okay,
So when I read the language, the municipality shall be responsible for establishing all works necessary to connect existing water mains to a water meter. So all works necessary to connect sounds to me like the water line, but I'm good if we're told. I mean, I'm not really. Might be good either way. I just wanted a dollar figure as to what we might be paying.
but it says connect existing water main.
So no cost to us to put a line in there is what I'm hearing for the district's books.
That's what I'm assuming.
But we don't know. Or
Maybe, I think the wording is fine. The existing water mains are there. And evidently there's meters. I didn't see the meters myself, but I hear there's meters. Connecting the service line to the meter will be the responsibility of the group. So I don't see any cost here, but you know, interesting things happen all the time. So I wouldn't want to say 100% there wouldn't be a cost, but the way I read this and my interpretation is that the service line is the responsibility of the group.
But it seems clear to me in the sentence, the licensees for the garden group shall be responsible for the establishment and maintenance of all irrigation works from the water meter, which is at the road, to the garden. That's clear.
Okay, perhaps I understood the language saying the water meter be located on or in the licensed area.
Yeah, that might not be accurate. That's right. I think that there's meters. They're not in the garden right now. So the meter is probably near the church or near the school. So that we have to run a line from that area.
Okay, Councillor Shukin.
Question to Councillor Donaldson, and sorry if you answered this already. Is the society prepared to pay for the installation of the water line and all of the costs associated?
They will if they're successful with the grant
Yeah.
fundraising. It'll be a significant cost. There is a brand new meter that has just been put in, just outside on the street, but near the picket fence of the museum. I'm grateful where it is right now because there's still gravel there, there's no pavers to lift, that sort of thing. And we would have to check with the district as to where to put the line. I'm assuming it can go right along the tennis court, be less obtrusive to anybody else, no driving over it down to the garden area. So as far as I understand it, is going to be a cost to the society. The meter is there, it's just a matter of hooking it up and then the billing starts.
Great, thank you. Mayor Little, I wonder if we might, I'm supportive of the agreement, but I wonder if we might also do a sort of a second resolution that any costs associated with the installation of a water line borne by the district, any of those costs borne by the district, come back to council for approval. I mean, we could also do a resolution that we encourage the society to, find ways and means of installing and paying for the work themselves. Again, I'd hate to hold this up, but there is an unknown here.
So one thing we could do is add a full stop, page 119.1, second sentence. The municipality shall be responsible for establishing all works necessary connecting existing water main to the water meter, full stop.
I might suggest, my question was simply who's responsible for the cost. I wasn't fussing the cost. It might not cost hardly anything. I don't really know. It was just a question of cost. And I don't think we know. And we've heard from the CEO that it sounds like it's not a big cost or something that could be worked out with a group. I didn't mean to cause so much trouble, just to get clear who's doing what. Early on, we decided not to support the group with financial support, which I think I was in favor of, and this may be just the cost of getting it set up.
Okay. Do you have any recommendations, Councillor Donaldson? With that piece, you said the cost will be significant. They don't have those funds right now, so the group will be applying for grants for that
Correct.
infrastructure.
That's correct. There's a grant available right now to apply for, and there'll be another one in the fall.
Okay, good. CAO Payette.
Would council just like to add in the word cost after establishment, comma, cost and maintenance? Then that would clear it up. And I can strike out located in the license area because I know that's not the case. And that cleans it up.
So strike out the located and add.
And cost in that next sentence, yep.
Okay.
Is that suitable?
Is that suitable to everybody? Say that again. So we're going to delete located on or in the license area, including establishment of the water meter itself, and you're going to replace it with.
That's it. Just strike it. And then in this next sentence, the licensee shall be responsible for the establishment, cost, and maintenance of the irrigation works. That clears that up.
Establishment, comma, cost, comma, and maintenance of all irrigation works. Is that clear for everybody? Okay. Okay. So on that, I'll entertain one of the options, one or two on page 121. Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you. Option 1, that council approves a license occupation agreement with the Chosen Grown Society to facilitate a community garden on the district property located at 4495 Happy Valley Road, and authorize the mayor and CAO to execute the agreement on behalf of the district, subject to the publication of notice in accordance with the community charter.
Okay, this is moved by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Epp. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And then we've got on page 135, we have an engineering consultant memo on the roads resurfacing program. CAO Payette, could you take us through that?
Thanks. Through the chair, we received support on this from Westbrook Consulting, our consultant engineers, on the process and tendering of the project. And if council recalls, through the budgeting that we had and through the roads asset management plan, we had brought this forward previously on the roads to be done. And we received the two tenders, and they were opened according to the proper procedures, and we're at the lowest bid of $830,143.34, which is over budget. So here we are tonight for approval to spend over budget to get all 4 roads done. So we can either do that, or we might have a few other options if council wants to discuss what they think of that.
Councillor Epp?
Yeah, in the past, we've often discussed with paving, and it's only been done in one road that I know of, and that is that to establish room on when we're paving roads for bike pathways at least. And on that section from, I know it's a really short section, but the Briarwood Lane to Pelican on Machosen Road, just want to know if there's been allowance for extra pavement on that section to allow for room for cycling.
I don't recall that. I don't believe so. I think we're just replacing.
Because we have, this has come up, well, it's 6 years now. It's come up every year. And I know it's written down somewhere, but
In a
it
policy
never seems to have. I don't know that it's really I'm sure it's written. It's,
I don't think it was a policy, but it's definitely been an ask, a constant ask.
yeah.
It's and the rationale for that is all the equipment is there, all the people power is there, for a nominal fee of additional oil and asphalt bits, that lanes for bicycles can be created. And I agree with Councillor Epp. It's small, but it's a start.
If I can comment, I know the stretch you're talking about, and it's not that long. I could investigate.
Okay,
And
thank you.
if it's within my spending approval, I can go ahead.
Councillor Donaldson, then Councillor Shukin.
Thank you. I'm just curious with the lower end of Lindholm. I travel that area quite a bit, and looking at it, we are over budget here. Could it be more worthy for us to patch rather than pave? There's a lot of heavy trucks that go up that hill, which is what's constantly wearing down the road, I suspect. It would give us a few more years maybe so that we can actually fit it into the budget better. I'm just thinking that if we want to not go so over budget on this, so we're looking at 40,000 over, it's not a lot, but if we're going to then add more asphalt to provide a little bit of a path lane type thing for bicycles, at the other end of the community, it might be a balance to consider financially, to not go more over budget than we need to.
So what you're saying is some of the road between Happy Valley and Leafield may not need repaving, could be patched. I suspect they looked at it in the spring, but I don't know. CAO Payette, did they look at the option of patching versus complete resurfacing?
Yeah, that was part of the whole process. To get into another discussion about the process of patching and then the resurfacing is a long discussion. These are all resurfacing. So that means patching has been done to the point where resurfacing is actually the recommendation. Patching is done prior to resurfacing, as you know. And so I believe that logically that Lindholm is at a point for the resurfacing. The patching is adequate where this is the time to resurface. I'm not sure patching Lindholm would be, like we could delay Lindholm a year maybe, but we need to resurface Lindholm. That's the whole process. Otherwise, you start losing the road. There's a rhyme and a reason through the road priority asset program that they went through, rigorous course. So we could delay that one. Another option would be to delay Briarwood for the year and maybe do it next year with the trail, like the bike trail. But the thing is, we have all the equipment already going to that location. We have that's where the major paving is being done, so Briar would make sense as well this year, because it's right there, like it's the economy of scale kind of thing. So if you want to stay in the budget, I wouldn't recommend Lindholm personally. Tiswell could wait a year because it's just sort of out there, and we can delay that one for 1 year and stay within budget. That would be more of my recommendation.
There's one large pothole
Yeah.
on Tiswold.
There.
It could sink all of this council.
Yeah.
That would need repairing,
So,
and it,
yeah,
more than patching it. It's. I think that is the pressure point for all the people that live.
fix the pothole.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then that's
It's huge, yeah.
okay. So that would be my recommendation then, is let's do that and get Tiswold ready for next year, and
Okay.
keep the others because they're all in sync.
Yeah.
And get that extra pathway done if I can. How's that
Yeah.
sound?
Okay. Councillor Gray, then Councillor Shukin.
Yeah, I don't know much about the different roads. Perhaps that potholes, needs a bigger fix. I wondered though, the recommendation was to spend 830,000. I think that's 26,000 over budget. What are we foregoing? What other if we proceed, is there something that we're not doing then for the $26,000? Like I take the recommendation to proceed. So do we are we just slowing something else down? Maybe we should be proceeding.
Is it just the cost of all of the materials have gone up and manpower? That's why there's an increase, or is there something that?
Yeah, I mean, we gave it our best shot when we brought the budget forward, but it's not really, the percentage difference is, it's around 5%, so that's pretty reasonable.
Excuse me.
Maybe I should clarify. I didn't mean I'm okay with the numbers here. I just wondered, we're taking an additional $26,000 from our budget, and it's from the reserve. Thank you. I was wondering what we were foregoing,
Oh, I see.
but the issue is that we're just dipping further into the reserve. Is there a problem doing that, Mr. Payette, or through the chair?
No, not really. We just have our 5-year plan, and we're trying to stick to it. We're trying to be prudent. But it won't make or break our reserves.
Yeah, and like you say, when it was brought forward earlier in the year, it was an estimate.
Yeah.
Based on as much knowledge as they had at the time, and the costs. Yeah. Councillor Gray and then Councillor Shukin.
And I think we don't actually have a road management plan yet. We simply have the assessment of the roads. So there's still a plan coming, I think, through the chair for council to look at, or to at least review.
I thought we had a plan.
Would I call it a plan? Yeah, it's definitely an asset management plan. We can expand it out for 5 or 10 years. Maybe is that what we could do? Like what more planning?
Okay, I'll maybe following the meeting, I'll just talk to the CEO. I thought we had gotten a review of our roads, but we had yet to get a plan as to which roads first and how it will work. I'm hearing reference to one now, so I'll just maybe take a look at that. Thank you. Just didn't know about it.
Councillor Shukin.
I just want to echo something Councillor Epp had said earlier about the potential of adequate shoulders for bike lanes, and especially on Machosen Road. And the problem, of course, is that some of this road work is done in patches. Mm-hmm. So you'll do a patch, and then you may have to wait another 5 years to do another patch. Interestingly, seems to be some preliminary work being done on Lindholm. I'm not sure why, but it looks like there's a broader gravel shoulder there. So it would be one of the things I'm going to probably put forward in the Parks and Trails master plan is, where possible, adequate shoulders for bike lanes. So it's just something we should continue with. And of course, there's always costs to manage as well. But yeah, just something that we've keep bringing back, but, yeah, so. Thanks.
Councillor Gray.
And we did have it before us on a director transportation plan to talk about that and get a plan for Metchosin Road, and we chose not to do that.
Yeah, Councillor Epp.
We just opted to not make it the first priority. It's certainly not off the table as far as the years go. The next time, the next project, maybe that one will be the choice of whatever council is deciding to go ahead. But it's not off the table.
I think it's good that if we're doing any paving on any of Metchosin Road, to do it in pieces as well before we get, unless we get a huge infrastructure grant where we could do that. And that is a possibility as well. But I think Councillor Epp's recommendation and her sentiments are valid. So, yeah, Councillor Schuster.
And I think the potential of wider shoulders in Metchosin Road is really a neat idea, especially having driven there and scooting around cyclists on inadequate shoulders. But the one thing I encourage us to do, if possible, is to connect with the CRD and see if there's a possibility of some sort of cost sharing there. Might be wild-eyed fantasy in my own mind, but I think there's a broader public good that would come with widening Metchosin Road. So, yeah.
Okay.
And not necessarily to the benefit of Metchosin residents, I would say. So I think there's a broader regional good there, but something to think about as we go. So,
Councillor Donaldson, you have a comment?
I just have a, through the chair, question for Councillor Schuken. Are you referencing, when you say CRD, is that CRD Waterworks for trails, or just CRD as a capital regional when planning roads throughout the region?
I am not exactly sure who I'm referencing, but yeah, but more to the point that I think, when I look at the number of cyclists that we have in Metchosin, I get the distinct sense not all of them live in Metchosin. Like, we're a great destination, we have great hills, we're a great workout, but I think a lot of those cyclists do not live here specifically. So
I would have thought that the CRD would be most interested in making improvements on the Galloping Goose Trail because they have made commitments to be a regional trail. And so we may get some pushback that it would benefit only Colwood and Metchosin residents, but it'd be worth a try. Councillor Gray.
And I think it was all part of the option we chose not to pursue. The Metchosin Road there is part of the regional system in terms of the CRD's view of where we'd put bike trails next and that. So I think you're right, talking to the CRD makes good sense.
Okay, so let's put forward, yep, go ahead.
I don't think anyone noticed, but I just put out a great t-shirt slogan, Metchosin, a great workout.
Okay, with that, could I have a motion to the lower bidder, Capital City Paving Limited, with the exclusion of Tiswell Road? Moved by Councillor Schuken, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Any other comments? All in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. And could I have a motion to adjourn?
Just before we do,
Sorry.
I just had a notice of motion to put forward.
Okay.
We have got already
Don't motivate on it.
No.
This, just give the notice of motion for next.
a motion that council request a Class D budget estimate to replace the fire hall admin quarters building with an on-site 2-story structure.
Okay, and you'll give that to the deputy corporate officer?
Correct.
Okay.
So I don't know if you could hear that very well. There was an interruption in the speaker just then. That council request a Class D budget estimate to replace the fire hall admin quarters building with an on-site 2-story structure.
Okay, that's a motion with notice that will be considered at the mid-July meeting. And a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Schuken, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Yes? Oh, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Great. Thank you, everybody. Have a great Canada Day.